In this problem, we are being asked to solve for theta. Theta is a Greek letter that represents an unknown angle measurement. In this problem, we're going to be solving it using trigonometry, and I can tell that we're going to be using trigonometry because it involves both angle measurements, like theta, and also has side measurements, like the 70 and 30 centimeters. The first thing that we need to do, like all trigonometry problems, is to label the diagram. In this diagram, the angle, the right angle, is already labeled for us. This is important because sine, cosine, and tangent work in right triangles. And theta is also labeled for us. This is the angle measurement that we're trying to calculate. Next, we need to label the three sides of the triangle. Start with the longest side of the triangle. This longest side can be found by looking across the triangle from the right angle. The second side of the triangle we need to label is the opposite side. The opposite side is always across the triangle from theta. And then the third side that we need to label is the adjacent side. The adjacent side is the last one left, and the word adjacent means next to, and the reason why we call this side adjacent is because it is next to the angle theta. The labeling helps us because it allows us to determine which formula is the correct one to pick. There are three choices. There's the sine formula, the cosine formula, and the tangent formula. To be able to pick the right formula, we need to figure out which two sides are the ones that are important. Notice how the adjacent side has the measurement 30 centimeters. That one's going to be used. And then the hypotenuse has the measurement of 70 centimeters. The side that we're going to ignore is the opposite because the opposite side is blank. There's no measurements, no variables. So let's focus on A for adjacent and H for hypotenuse. Which of these three formulas has A and H? Let's go through each one. It's not going to be sine. Look at this one. Yes, this is the one we want to use. We want to use C for cosine because it has the A for adjacent and the H for hypotenuse. So I'm going to write down the cosine formula. And for this problem, we're going to use the inverse cosine. The reason why we're using inverse cosine is because we're trying to solve for an angle measurement. If we were solving for a side measurement, then we'd use normal cosine. The symbol for inverse is this little -1 symbol. And in the cosine formula, the fraction follows the pattern that we find in sohcahtoa. This memory trick, sohcahtoa, allows us to remember which measurements go on the top and bottom of the fraction. So for cosine, we have the A for adjacent goes in the numerator. And then the letter H tells us that the denominator is the hypotenuse. Let's write this formula again, but fill it in with the measurements. So at the beginning, we have theta equals, that's what we're solving for, cosine inverse. And then in the parentheses, we need to have our fraction. On the numerator, we have the adjacent. The measurement for adjacent is the 30. And then in the denominator, we need to have the hypotenuse, which is the 70. This is what we need to type into our calculator to calculate theta. So let's pull that up onto the screen. To use inverse cosine in a calculator, make sure that your calculator is in degree mode. On a TI calculator, you can click the mode button and make sure that the word degree is highlighted. Then click clear to go back to the home screen. And now we can type in inverse cosine. We're going to use the cosine button to do this. And before we click that cosine button, we need to first press second, and then we can press cosine. Notice how on the screen we have that little -1 symbol that indicates that we're using inverse cosine. And then in the parentheses, we need to type this fraction, 30 over 70. To do that on the calculator, we're going to use division because division is the same thing as a fraction. So we have 30 and then divided by 70, and we can hit enter. And this is the result for theta. Let's round to the hundredths, so we have 64.62. 64.62. Theta is 64.62. And this measurement is the answer for this missing corner where the theta is. So that corner, since it's an angle, we're going to measure that corner in degrees. So our final answer is that theta is 64.62 degrees. That's all for today. Like and subscribe.